I made a documentary called The Nature of Existence, and it's about the nature of existence. But it turns out there's a lot deeper we could go in all these questions. So this documentary and this DVD, all 7 DVDs, are going to dig deeper into all these questions. We'll spend a lot more time, and for those of you who thought the movie was just an appetizer, this will be like the full meal. So let's dig into the first question. Why do we exist?
Good question.
We exist to be able to pass on our genes.
To promote the oneness of humanity.
To make a difference.
It's just a blessing, really, to wake up every day.
To have love, and we exist for His pleasure.
Because God made us.
To care for each other. Out of the 10 Commandments, only 2 of them are toward God. The rest of them are the way we treat each other.
And why does anything exist?
Why does space exist? Why does time exist? Why does the universe exist?
Damned if I know. I mean, my interest really starts right after that. You know, since we exist, what are we going to do about it?
We exist to love and to be loved and to find that within our lives.
Humans exist because we are part of God's effort to bring the greatest joy to all of creation. And we do our best to cooperate in His work. If we are reliable that way, then we can be trusted more and more.
The truth is that we do not exist.
If you believe that we are here as the random, semi-random assemblage of amino acids, then we're not here for any reason except that we happened.
If thread by thread we would take ourselves apart, we would find that there is nothing there.
I have to think the only reason that we exist is from just the random collision of atoms.
Many philosophers, going back to Descartes, have questioned the notion of existence and have suggested that simply because we think that we can affirm our existence. But there's really no empirical way to affirm this, and if you look at quantum physics and start to study some of the interesting connections between the sciences, quantum physics, and many maybe non-traditional religious systems, in fact there is doubt about our existence, or at least doubt whether or not we exist as the way we perceive.
I think we exist so that we can just experience the journey of life, which encompasses everything. And I really think that once we get in touch with there is no good or bad experience, but it's all just an experience, then we really get to blossom into the great beings that we are meant to really be.
We exist because we exist.
We exist because somebody had sexual intercourse and brought us here. That's the bottom line.
You can look at anyone and basically realize their parents slept together, you know, and probably not happily so from the way most marriages work. That's another story.
We are an outgrowth of what's normal to nature.
You know, our parents met, they fell in love, they formed a relationship, and we're the fruit of that relationship.
I think for me, the biggest thing is I don't give a why we exist, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people go around like, why are we here? Who cares?
The why we exist is absolutely unknowable. It's the greatest waste of time any spiritual seeker has ever undertaken. The why is already here. The very fact that you exist, you're born. To ask why I'm existing is okay, but it's fodder. It's almost something that, you know, it's like having a scratch or having an itch, and you keep itching it over and over and over, and it starts to bleed. And after a while, you're going, why am I doing this? But you keep doing it. But after a while, you got to let it go. You got to let it heal, and it'll take care of itself. The why takes care of itself. Now, instead of why we're here, it's more important to ask, what am I here to contribute? What am I here to offer? When you find that, and when you answer that through your active involvement in that, why am I not just here, but what am I here to do? What am I here to offer? Then what happens is the why will automatically be answered.
And you should not be in a hurry to find out the answer. What is the purpose of life? What is the aim of life? Why do I exist? You know, these are the questions which would help you to find your path. You know, they are like the instruments for you to dig deep into yourself. One who knows will not give you. If someone tries to give you, I tell you they don't know it.
I feel like life is meaning, you know, or our existence is meaning.
That obey God and go to church and do the thing that's right and meet His standard in life.
You know, why are we here? Where did we come from? You ever consider those type questions? Or are you just considering whether or not you're going to get laid this weekend? Or whether or not you're going to pass your exam? Or how are you going to make a living in life? You know, you need to think about the deeper questions. How did we get here?
Why do we exist?
In 3 words, to serve God.
The world was ultimately created to bring about the glorification of God.
God created us for His pleasure.
Just for the pleasure of the Lord.
God, we believe, created Himself out of the triple darkness of space with the cracking of an atom. And we believe that after God first formed His own brain, and then God began to form Himself and then the known universe, then God wanted to express Himself. And then God wanted a vessel and a vehicle through which He could express Himself.
We have to make the world a better place. We can't complain that the world's not a good place. Complaining is a dime a dozen. Each and every one of us is responsible for our little world. What's called it's interesting because when Hasidic philosophy talks about our responsibility, it talks about our responsibility towards ourselves, our responsibility towards God, and what's called chelkei ba'olam, His portion of the world. Each and every one of us is responsible for a little piece of this world. We have our own possessions. So what do I do with my possessions? What do I do with this table that we're sitting at? Is this a table that I invite guests to eat at? Or is this a table that I only use for my own self-aggrandizement, my own pleasures, and that's all it is? Well, no, hopefully this is a table that can be used to help other people.
We exist so we can give back to God.
Man exists to have a relationship with God and with one another.
Satanism particularly is a religion of self-pleasure. We're Epicureans. We feel that we should explore the pleasures of the mind and the body.
Да будем да се множимо, да се сложимо, а не да се биемо, да не настигне земјарска кугла.
To be of service to other people, to help others. We are all only a part of each other's lives for the purpose of growing.
One reason could be is because God didn't want to be the only thing living on earth.
Because He was alone. I think, when I do think about it, that we're just like some bizarre experiment that is failing constantly.
We are an accident on the face of this little ball called Earth at the edge of the Milky Way, which is one of millions of solar systems, of galaxies, in an ever-expanding universe. And I think it's awesome to think about it. It's kind of titillating, too, to think that we're a part of this giant structure that's constantly shifting and changing, and yet following certain laws imposed on it by the very nature of matter and energy.
I can't answer that question. The person that could answer that, absolutely. Why are we here? I want to talk to that person because I want to know why we're here.
The Buddha answered that question by saying, don't ask that question. You know, you'll never know the answer, you know, so there's no point in your even asking it. So forget about that, you know. You know, the Talmud has this wonderful passage where God says to Abraham, you know, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't exist. And Abraham says, yes, Lord, I'm deeply appreciative of that. Thank you very much. But you know, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be known. So there's something about the fact that we are the eye of the universe that acknowledges the existence of the universe. Because the universe would be a cold, dark place without humans in it, or without some degree of consciousness.
Human beings are here, that we have been born the limitless lifetime because of the ignorance, that we have not recognized our true nature, which is called mind of enlightenment.
We have acquired karma to become human being.
there are 8.4 million places of birth in which this soul moves according to its own karma. So when we have become human being, that means we have been given some special power to realize yourself and free from this cycle of death and birth. This is the main purpose of becoming a human being.
道就是一切事物的本源，道是没有天地之前先天而生。
那他认为人呢，基本是一个自然的存在，但是这个自然的存在呢，是属于整个宇宙。
按照传统的孔子的思想，就是阴阳结合、男女结合，我们就出现了。
因为孔子呢，他是相信周易的这个思想，周易的思想呢是说这个宇宙啊，它是生生不已，它是永远生生不已的，所以这个宇宙呢，它没有一个终止，没有一个结束。
We believe on the karma, and not such as creator who created something.
The reason creation happened, Mayor Bob explains, it was just a whim of God to know himself.
Human existence is an evolutionary imperative that had to happen, and it's probably happened in other forms or maybe the same form all over the universe.
The only way you can get a human mind, or the only way you can get a conscious mind, is by building a really complicated machine. And the only process we've found that actually does this, other than us, if we were to try and do it, is natural selection.
Existence is this magnificent eye of space. Its nature is light. And what does this field of existence do? It extends itself into a point and withdraws itself again.
We exist like a flower exists, or a cactus, or this fig tree, or, we're just a different manifestation of this life force.
So we're not necessarily above or below or superior or inferior to a cactus?
Well, to me, I think so, because I have a great affection for human beings. I think human beings are a spectacular organism, but they don't have intrinsically any more value.
But if we all disappeared like that, would it matter?
I don't think the universe has a consciousness that cares about a certain species over a different species.
Since meaning only comes from human minds or from minds assign meaning to things, it's the only reason the universe has any meaning, or that we or our lives have any meaning, is that our minds have come to exist and can now assign meaning to it.
Humans tend to view the whole universe as if it's made for humans. Mark Twain wrote a wonderful essay about this over 100 years ago, where he compared the height of the Eiffel Tower to the whole history of the Earth. And he pointed out that if you do that, all of human existence would fit into the skin of paint on the knob at the top. And it would be obvious now, wouldn't it, to anybody looking at the tower from a distance, that the purpose of the tower was to hold up that skin of paint at the top.
Why do we exist? There's been a chain of coincidences, out of which a most unlikely result has caused life on this planet. It might well be we're the first witnesses in a universe that isn't going to produce very many more.
If you believe in Darwinian evolution, and you believe what most astronomers believe, that there are 10 to the 22 stars out there, and that some very large fraction of them have planets around them, then the rest is inevitable. Molecules will get together, they'll bump into each other, sunlight will heat them, chemical reactions will take place, an extra large molecule will form somewheres, that extra large molecule will go around gobbling up other molecules, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until we're finally here.
What is the purpose of this universe? I wonder if there is any purpose at all. Because I believe the purpose can never be within the thing. An air conditioner's purpose is not within the air conditioner. Its purpose is to keep a room or a space cool. A car's purpose cannot be within the automobile. It is to transport people or things from one point to another. To find the purpose of the universe within universe is a futile effort.
La fede dice che all'origine c'è Dio.
Imagine an airplane flying out over the ocean loses a box full of carburetors, and the carburetors fall in the ocean, and one of them eventually washes up on the sand, and some hermit crabs make a home in that carburetor, and they find it's a marvelous home. It has chambers and doors, and they, if they do such things, get together and thank the god of the sea for providing this magnificent home on the beach for them. But the people in Detroit who made the carburetor didn't have the crabs in mind. Now, I'm not saying it's that remote, the universe's purpose and ours, but it may be that the purpose of the universe is much larger than just us.
I'm not sure that our existence isn't part of some much larger pattern for which we're just a small part. We don't understand. There are anthills in Brazil that live for 15 years. The life of any individual ant is 120 days. The ant does not know that it is part of a much larger organism. There's no physical connection between the ants, but yet the anthill has a birth, a life, a senescence, and then a death. So where is the soul of the anthill? And similarly, are we humans part of a much larger organism that our consciousness contributes to? And each one of us, by becoming a little more conscious, contributes to this global consciousness, or even interstellar consciousness.
As children, we tend to ask why a lot. Well, what we mean is how. Say, so, you know, the sky is blue, why? You have to go to bed, why? You seek a purpose, whereas what you really seek is an explanation, a precedence. So as scientists, I'm not certain if why is the correct question.
God said in the beginning, let there be. But the why question, as science has developed, has really been transformed into the how question. So when you ask, why are we here? The evolutionary theory is the best answer we have.
All we can tell you is about the mechanisms of our existence. We can tell you about the parts list, atoms, molecules, and what have you. We can tell you something about how these things interact with the forces around you. However, at some level, that's probably not as satisfying as people would want in trying to seek an answer to that question. So the rest of the question of why do we exist? Well, we're in a universe that apparently has laws that lead to the existence of creatures like us, conscious creatures. One way to think of these laws is perhaps the universe has no choice in creating creatures like us. We are intimately part of this universe in a way that modern science has started to reveal is much more spectacular and breathtaking than we had conceived of previously. So at the end of the day, if you ask me the question, why do we exist? It seems to be the case that the universe called us into existence.
Scientists, you know, largely are in it as a thirst for knowledge. It's for the question that you came here with, is why do we exist? Why is everything like this?
Some ape started some new game about 5 million years ago. That's one answer. Another answer, and this is a physicist's answer, would be because this universe has just those particular figures that make it possible, indeed probable, for carbon to be made in stars. Therefore, there's a lot of carbon about, a lot of oxygen, hydrogen. It's going to make something. It might just as well make us.
Why do we exist?
Rather than saying, why do we exist, we should absolutely just celebrate the fact that we exist and be incredibly grateful that all these things happened that allowed us to exist. But the minute you ask why, you are assuming that there's some larger mind or some larger, you know, way of thinking that creates the context in which that has an answer. And I don't think that that's true.
You're what the universe is doing. You're the dance of the infinite. Each and every one of you, and you're connected to everybody else in that way. And I don't know how much more profound you can get than that.
I think this is how it starts for a lot of people, looking up at the sky and trying to imagine how big this universe is, but we never really can. And, you know, I look up at the sky sometimes and it's just so big, and I know that we can't even see even a tiny portion of it. And it's really mind-blowing, and it's cool.
Why did the universe come into being?
Our universe was apparently created about 14 billion years ago, when this event we call the Big Bang occurred, and our existence came rushing out of an incredibly small, compact region of space and time.
And in that Big Bang, there were created only a couple of elements, hydrogen and helium. And you can't make very much in the way of interesting life or even planets out of just those two elements. Helium's inert, hydrogen has nothing to react with. And so beyond those two elements, we look to the stars for their creation. The first stars made the first heavy elements. And as time passed, more and more stars evolved, some of them dying as supernovae, and they produced all of the 80-some-odd elements of nature that we know of. So the four elements that are most abundant in life are the four elements that are most abundant in nature. Nature has provided the things that we're made out of. And not just here. You look at a galaxy a billion light years away, you see those same elements shining as the most abundant lines in the spectrum.
So the right question is not why do we exist? The right question is why does this universe exist? Why is the universe this way and not some other way?
Most scientists certainly believe that if you rewind things, then shortly after the universe was first generated and you wind it forward again, you'd end up with pretty much the same thing. It's those initial conditions that somehow define how things have become.
There are quite a number of inherent sources of randomness in the processes that lead from the Big Bang to where we are now. And that randomness would guarantee that the universe would not be identical. Now, it would be very similar.
We believe that Earth was created by being organized out of existing materials. You know, that we're completely compatible with the scientific view of creation. The only thing that we understand is that it happens as they describe, but for a purpose.
We are the way we are because of a whole enormous string of causal events going back to, well, the origin of the universe, then the origin of life.
The vast majority of the stuff in the universe is completely invisible. We call it dark matter, and we still don't know what it is.
We believe there is a force out there that we're calling dark energy. It's an anti-gravity force operating over a very large scale, inflating the universe and increasing the speed at which the universe expands.
If the dark energy had been much bigger early on, things would have expanded much faster and there just wouldn't be any stars, there wouldn't have been any galaxies, there wouldn't be any planets, and there wouldn't be heavy elements like the ones that, you know, that we're made out of.
When we look at the microwave background, the leftover heat from the Big Bang, we're seeing the oldest light in the universe. And we're looking back to 13.7 billion years ago. When we look back in time that far, the universe was really simple. That's good for me, because as a theorist, I like studying simple things. And when we look at this simple universe, we can use the observations to infer the basic properties of the universe back then and learn a lot about the universe now. Eventually, we reach a time at which we need to combine quantum mechanics and general relativity. The problem is our 20th century ideas of quantum mechanics and general relativity don't fit together. Tying together those two ideas into a theory of quantum gravity is one of the great challenges of 21st century physics. String theory is one attempt to tie that together.
What string theory suggests is at extremely small distances, space is knotted up into various kinds of what we call compactified extra dimensions, and those extra dimensions are almost like the skeleton of a DNA molecule. It seems that string theory gives rise to a picture in which very, very small properties of space are like DNA and give rise to a world which is like the kind of world we look at and see. Just like the number of possibilities in biology is enormous, the number of ways of rearranging a DNA molecule is fantastic. It's too big to even write the number down. The number of ways of rearranging the DNA of the universe that string theory suggests is also enormously big. So instead of string theory giving what string theorists like myself had originally hoped, namely one unique explanation of why the world permits flowers, why the world has electrons and so forth, it gave rise to something totally different, an enormously large diversity of possibilities.
Theoretical physicists like to ask big questions like, how did the universe begin? What's it made of? What are its fundamental constituents?
What is M theory?
M theory is a theory not only of strings, but of membranes. It lives in 11 space-time dimensions, and we now realize that what we used to think of as 5 different string theories are not 5 different theories at all. They're really just 5 different corners of this deeper and more profound theory that we call M theory. We'd like to think that M theory might be the final theory that we're all looking for, but we're still there's still lots of things about M theory that we don't understand.
If you start with a Big Bang, which is essentially pure energy, as the energy turns into matter, all the laws of physics we know about will produce roughly equal amounts of matter and antimatter. And yet we know there's much more matter in the universe than antimatter, and we know that now on the largest scales. We know that the whole universe that we can see mostly consists of matter. So if the laws of physics we know about would have only made equal amounts of matter and antimatter, then we know there must be laws of physics we don't know about.
I think if there's one overriding theme to modern physics, it's, it could be argued that it's about the systematic destruction of our concept of reality.
Once the soul is freed of illusion, illusion does not merely cease to exist, but is then found never to have existed at all.
Maybe your parents took boots and they took like baby powder and they made footprints all the way to the fireplace. So in your mind, is Santa Claus real? Absolutely. As you get older, do your perceptions change? Of course they do.
Particles, in fact, don't exist. Consider, for example, a particle we all know and love, the electron, which goes through all the wires to make electricity and is an important part of atoms that make us up and all that kind of thing. They're all the same. If you produce, an electron was produced on the other side of the universe and you brought it here and compared it with an electron, they're the same. It's not in the same way that you pick up two red billiard balls and say, these are pretty similar. We say they're identical, indistinguishable. If you put them in a bag and you pulled one out after you sort of shake it up a bit, not only could you not even in principle tell which one is which, but we can show that the electrons themselves lost their identity. And this is because the electron as a separate, distinct entity doesn't really exist. They are merely bumps in something called a field, which is a property of space and time.
Superstrings, as their name suggests, are one-dimensional objects, like violin strings, if you like, which can vibrate. And the idea is that each mode of vibration, each note, if you like, represents a different elementary particle. So this note of the string might be an electron, that note of the string might be a quark, and so on. So the elementary particles are still there that we know and love, but they're no longer the fundamental objects. The fundamental object is the string.
And if it's true for the fundamental particles in nature, it's true for everything that makes them up, including us. And so at some level, we don't exist. It's only sort of bumps on the field of the universe.
We find that matter is not actually a solid thing. It's a vibrating set of wavelengths.
And so now we're trying to understand what it is about the history of the universe, the creation of the universe, that happened to lead to the DNA of the universe being just right for our own existence.
There's this concept called the anthropic principle that states that in this particular universe that we're in, it is arranged in such a manner that we can think about the universe.
One of our best models for where the matter in the universe may have come from is from the properties of neutrinos. Now, in the early universe, you would make huge numbers of neutrinos. Neutrinos are fundamental particles, or fundamental as far as we know anyway, that are very much like electrons, except they don't have any charge and they have almost no mass. And there are models which say that in the very early universe, these Majorana neutrinos could decay in a way that is different from matter and antimatter and would produce the matter we see in the universe around us.
It's just that there are lots of different possible universes, and you happen to live in one where the properties of the universe are congenial to your being there, to life.
We were created, first of all, because the number of possibilities for life is enormous. And among that enormous number of possibilities, a very small number are such that they can think. But then the tree of life, the starting at the root, which was bacteria, or even more primitive than bacteria, a branching process created an enormous tree of life, and we are simply one tiny branch on that tree of life. It just happens to be the branch with a big enough brain to ask questions.
It seems to me then, from what you're saying, there are really two answers, only two possibilities. One is, because the universe is so vast, there are so many chances, it's like you flip a coin enough times, eventually it's going to land on its side.
Yes.
Right? Or some entity decided, I'm going to create these laws to be just so this life can come to be.
What cosmologists and physicists are coming to is not a universe which is everywhere the same, like a sort of monocolored blanket, but a crazy quilt of different environments.
And different laws.
And different laws.
So beyond our horizon and out to some considerable distance, we think the universe is very much the way it is around us now. But far beyond that, the universe is probably extremely different, maybe even with different laws of physics.
And different kinds of particles, different kinds of constants of nature.
Maybe a different God in charge of each.
That I will leave to other people.
The Big Bang, did it require someone or something to push a start button?
We imagine that someone had to push a button because we are mad, crazy projectors. We project our experience on everything in the universe. And so we assume it's, that our local understanding of reality is the complete end-all and be-all of what is. And that's one of the reasons why the intervening God, the punishing, rewarding God, seems so much just like a transparent reflection of parenting.
Nothing ever started it. It's just always been that way. That is what existence is.
You have the defenders of the anthropic principle. You have the defenders of special creation, that we couldn't have evolved, we had to be specially created. There's also the view of intelligent design, that the universe couldn't have the kind of order it does, along with the disorder apparently, if there weren't someone to design it. Now, none of those arguments really explain anything.
If it did start at some particular moment, what on earth does it mean to say it needed an entity to start it? I mean, maybe it did need an entity to start it, but it's a very, very different thing to go from there to saying that that entity was a God, a conscious being, an intelligence, the kind of thing that forgives sins and answers prayers. That is the most preposterous piece of lazy succumbing to wishful thinking that you could imagine. There may well be, in fact almost certainly is, something, plenty of things perhaps, in physics and cosmology that we don't understand. But whatever it is, when we finally find out what it is, it certainly won't be the God of the Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, or anybody else.
Somehow there is a source. Why is there something rather than nothing? And the who is the source? Well, that's where the term God comes in.
Can't even really ask it. Why should there be something instead of nothing? This is one of the great philosophical questions. You could just as easily ask, why should there be nothing instead of something? Maybe something is the natural state of things, and nothing would be really weird.
No one was there to record that history, so we can all guess. But there was no one around. We can speculate. We can take some scientific fact, but only God knows. And at the proper time, he will reveal that knowledge.
Do you think he would know what came before him even?
He's God. He knows all. He knows what we know not.
But with our imaginations, we've reached across the universe. We've gone back 15 billion years to the origin of the universe by understanding the nature of light. In my worldview, I'm what the universe is doing. I'm the universe looking back on itself through this biological organism called me.
God is not a man. God is the origin of all creation.
He created the world because he had a particular desire for a dwelling place in the lower realms.
The more we learn about the nature of the universe, the less and less there is for a creator to do.
I have no idea why in the world he would want such a thing. It's completely beyond my ability to understand. But he wanted a dwelling place in the lower realms. What does that mean? That means he wants to be revealed here. That means he's going to create a place of apparent hiddenness. And interestingly enough, the word used in the Torah to describe God as the creator is a word that denotes hiddenness. He hides in the world, and our job is to find him. Our job is to uncover him. Our job is to see in all of the craziness and all the apparent darkness of the world, the light of godliness. That's why he created this.
I think if you understand what's being discovered now about the nature of the structure of existence itself, you have to understand that there is an overall intelligence that represents the combination of all things in creation. And since we are intelligent, that intelligence must be a reflection of the larger scale as well.
I mean, even if you have the Big Bang Theory, what happened before the Big Bang?
Existence, absolute and eternal, as an absolute vacuum, existed without knowing itself. Meher Baba says, in it reverberated the question, which some people from the Hindu tradition believe it came as the sound of Om. That sound, that original sound, was the question, who am I?
Reverence and awe that we have for God grows with the age of the universe as well as its extent and expanse.
If there was a Big Bang, something had to start the Big Bang, right? Well, but this is based on an idea you have of time, like there's cause and effect.
Time is a thing that man created. God is not a respecter of time. God is the same in our terms today, tomorrow, and the next day, and forevermore.
स्मृतियाँ ये सब कह रही हैं ईश्वर है. ईश्वर नहीं हो तो आकाश गिर जाएगा, पृथ्वी पलट जाएगी. ईश्वर है, everywhere is God.
There is a kind of a beauty in every aspect of creation, that things can be so perfectly worked out.
If you were a religious person, how would you explain all that vast wasted space? Would you tell yourself there are huge numbers of intelligent species out there also being shaped by God? Or would you tell yourself all that wasted space is just a background for humanity?
If someone can say that they believe God always existed, why be unable to believe the universe always existed?
Which is even more reasonable because we don't know that God exists. We do know the universe exists.
What caused God? Oh, well, but God's not that sort of thing. God is an entity unto himself. He doesn't require creation because he's always been, right? You see, it's the same question. The universe has always been. There's never been a time when there wasn't a universe, or time came into being, and if time comes into being, there's no before.
Perhaps the universe had no choice but to call us into existence.
It all started when we found out we're not at the middle of the earth. We live on the surface of a sphere with no particular center. And then that sphere is going around the sun, not the other way around. And the sun isn't at the middle of the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy isn't at the middle of the universe. And the matter that we're made out of isn't even the most common form of matter in the universe. And to top it all off, it appears that matter is not even the dominant constituent of the universe. So it wasn't made apparently just for us. Look at the machine, see how it works, try to discern its purpose. But maybe the universe exists because it has no choice. Because I think it's impossible to imagine space and time without having matter and energy. If you try to imagine nothing, it's impossible. Try to imagine the absence of time and the absence of dimension, the absence of space.
There's a whole set of predictions that were made about what we should see in experiments if there was a Big Bang. So for instance, all the galaxies moving away from every other galaxy. The farther away a galaxy is, the faster it's moving. There should be this cosmic background radiation in all directions with a very particular kind of electromagnetic spectrum. That's 3.2 Kelvin, you know. We've made, these are astonishing predictions that give you very precise numerical values that you'll find in experiments, and sometimes decades later when the technology became available, they were spectacularly confirmed.
The difference between scientific creation myths and other people's creation myths is that scientific creation myths are not just about words. They're about scientific, predictive, usually mathematical models which can make detailed predictions to check the agreement between what the model predicts and what the observations actually show.
And now we're going, well, there are hundreds of billions of universes, and you start getting into the thing, well, wouldn't it be easier to think that there's an entity called Brahman who is dreaming, and out of this comes this wonderful thing? Isn't that just as relevant as a way of describing it? Because it's beyond human comprehension anyway. You know, the numbers are just so big and the size of it. And you're always left with the same question, which is ontological. Why did the universe come into being?
One feature about string theory and M theory that its critics frequently use to beat it with is that they allow not one single universe, but millions, possibly infinitely many different universes.
then let's say this universe is just an electron in a much, maybe a bubble on a great vast ocean of universes. Then for us to sit here and to be willing to kill each other over how the universe came to be and who created it is it's probably not a good idea. You know, we have so much to learn.
The problem, of course, is a linguistic problem. The word universe was never intended to have a plural. Okay? It was intended to be everything. We use it in a slightly different way now. We use it to describe a region of space which is very large, but where the properties of nature are all common. We look out at very distant places and we see that the atoms out there are the same as the atoms here. But the way things are going in physics and cosmology very, very strongly suggests that if we could only look further, if we could only look to much larger distances, we would detect regions with different kinds of properties. Instead of having electrons, they might have Snoopy-Doos, I don't know.
Maybe it just has to be that there is time and there is space, but with them comes mass and energy and universes, and not just one, but many.
We also know now that the universe is expanding faster and faster under the control of something else that's invisible and not very well understood called dark energy. And only those regions that are held together by dark matter will survive. Everything else is going to be torn apart.
That we know that we have both particles and antiparticles in the universe. The electron has an antiparticle called the positron. And it turns out that mathematically, an antiparticle is exactly the same as a normal particle going backwards in time. And this turns out to be an unavoidable consequence of relativity in quantum mechanics and this thing called field theory that we use to describe things. And so really sort of all around us, the antiparticles could be viewed as particles that are traveling backward in time.
Physicists, of course, when we get down to the micro level, will say there are particles that are running backwards in time and particles that are running forwards in time. And given that, you arrive at a very peculiar view of the universe, that we're fixed in a perception where the past becomes the future. But physics accepts that the future can become the past. If that's true, then we can affect the past.
And I can go on for hours like this if you want me to. I have another experiment in France where we make an atomic clock out of neutrons. I'm not making this up. We build an atomic clock out of neutrons. We stick it in a huge electric field. We change the sign of the electric field and see if the frequency of the clock shifts. And that, believe it or not, is also sensitive to whether the laws of physics are the same for time going forward and back.
If you were a photon, if you could travel at the speed of light, you would have no concept of time. So according to the photon, there is no time. Everything is frozen.
Is the universe simple and understandable, or is it complex and beyond our comprehension?
It must be that the universe is simple and comprehensible, otherwise it's almost pointless to try to do science. And the evidence we've gathered over the last 400 or 500 years seems to be very much in favor of that.
Currently, there's only two stories. The first one is that an old man with a white beard created the universe in 6 days and then rested on the seventh. And the other one is that out of absolute nothingness, 13.5 billion years ago, this tremendous explosion occurred. And out of nothing came everything. Now, I ask you, which of those two stories is more improbable?
Considering that there are only two choices, the man in the white beard started everything, or everything came out of nothingness, doesn't either one require coming out of nothingness? Because even the creator had to come out of nothingness at some point.
Someone asked St. Augustine that if God created time, where was God before time began? And St. Augustine answered that he invented hell for people who ask questions like that. We have a fish brain.
We shouldn't ask
questions. And
questions.
the fish brain is only capable of operating at a certain level. And the universe operates at a different level. And you can only go so far with deductive and inductive reasoning, because inductive and deductive reasoning were designed to help us survive on the savannah.
The universe is, I think, comprehensible, but only if you set your standards very low on comprehending.
You have not understood the structure of the universe. You don't know the size of the universe. You don't know how it is functioning. You don't know what kind of things exist in this universe. Every day we find something which is totally mind-boggling. Let us understand it first, and then we'll think how it was created. How can we think about the creation of something which we don't know how it is working, what it is, what is the size of it?
We're only halfway from Australopithecus to human. Okay, I'm not surprised we have, on the one hand, relativity, on the other hand, quantum theory, and they don't fit. Perhaps in 1,000 years' time, we've only been doing science for 2.5 centuries, perhaps another 100 centuries of science, and then we might be able to put things together a little more rationally.
In our naivete, we look at the universe and we try to make it seem just like sort of a larger version of our village.
Trying to figure out why we're here. There's no answer to that. It's like you figure out, well, what created the world? Where does space end? How did, what is the big boom? Was there nothing before the big boom? Was it just a vast void and the sudden boom? And then that developed into, human beings at McDonald's? It doesn't make any sense if you try to figure out why, or evolution, or, Christianity, or Buddhism, or why history went the way it did, and why it continues to go the way it goes. It doesn't make any sense. It's full of all kinds of tragedies and ironies and hypocrisies. So I can't ask myself why I'm here, why life is here. I guess the question's got to be, now that we're here, now that I'm here, now that you're here, how can we find peace?
It was Pinker, I think, who said that, who pointed out that we are not evolved to solve the great questions of the universe. We're evolved to be successful hunter-gatherers. There's absolutely no law that says that we can solve all the great questions of the universe. Maybe, we're evolved to work at scales so different from quantum mechanics, so different from cosmology. Maybe there are things about it we can't get our heads around.
So I guess one thing we all agree on is that we are here. Or maybe some might even dispute that, but let's assume we agree that we're here. So do we have a purpose?
The very fact is that we do exist, and that's the true starting point, recognizing that I do exist.
I think why we exist and our purpose are intimately entwined. If you knew why we exist, then you could compare your actions to this standard and say, am I doing the right thing? Are we going the right direction? And so I think why and purpose are really the same issue.
उद्देश्य सबसे पहला तो ये है कि भाई विद्वान सर्वत्र पूजते आदमी को सबसे पहले शिक्षित होना चाहिए पृथ्वी पर.
My goals have always been to satisfy my own curiosity and not to give a damn whether it's useful for anything, not to give a damn whether it's going to advance humanity, not to give a damn whether it's going to make me rich, but just because I have this brain which keeps asking questions and doesn't want to let go of them. I think that's probably true of a large number of scientists.
My purpose as a scientist is to understand the universe.
The only thing that we really can do is to try to get a good understanding about what our world is all about. And when we look at the human brain, I mean, that's really what our brain is designed to do.
The expansion of consciousness, the expansion of the human mind, actually trying to perfect civilization.
I think mankind's purpose as a whole is that of custodian, and we are only here as custodians of the planet.
This earth is a living organism. So like in the human body, there are many germs, many bacteria. Right now in my body, there would be millions of things living in my body. So like that, we are living on the earth just like that. Earth is also a living being.
On a larger size scale of the planet, I want to be a good ancestor.
用中国传统的话概括一下，要上对起父母和祖先。
The next generation can definitely count on me to learn and attain my highest potential and my highest goals, my highest aspirations, so that I can impart whatever piece of knowledge is necessary to sustain the next 7 generations.
We are also on a path of what might be called self-transcendence. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the real mystical religious kind of transcendence that sometimes people refer to, although certainly that can be one manifestation of it. But for all of us, we grow and we change and adapt from one stage of life to the next, and that's part of how we learn and develop. And so even though I'm the same person I was when I was 5 years old, I've obviously changed as well, and I've gotten new behaviors and I've learned new things.
You're sitting in your purpose all around you. Everything you're resting in is your purpose.
Either your purpose is love or your purpose is self-gratification.
Only humans. Why do we ask, what is our purpose? And the reason we ask the question is we know we're going to die. And it seems so utterly futile.
All of us are under a death sentence. We have to come up with some story that makes sense of that.
So as a result, we've come up with this concept that, well, life has to have a purpose.
The most common way and the easiest way is to be able to borrow a narrative or a story that the culture you're in is invested in.
When you're in love, when you're on that perfect wave, if you're, I surf, you don't ask what the meaning of that is. You experience it, you revel in it. And if you were to experience life from moment to moment in that way, chances are there wouldn't be a whole lot of philosophy books. But this yearning, this never quite being content with where you're at, I think has a lot to do with being successful as a species.
Knowing that we weren't imbued with any real purpose to begin with, I think is the greatest freedom we could possibly have, because we have infinite possibility.
I think that what matters is not what we think our purpose is, but that we feel like we're part of a purpose that's greater than ourselves. I say that, but that's actually what good people need. We're all on a sliding scale. There's not, this dividing line between good people and bad people. But we have tendencies toward self-aggrandizement, the desire to make ourselves bigger and control other people and make things go our way and rise higher in status. And that is what moves us into the category of evil if we let it take over too much.
Doing what I do here for the Lord is more gratifying than anything else.
We were made by God, for God.
Purpose is to know God. And you are searching, but you don't know for the present. You know one day you will come to know.
Mayor Baba said that the goal of life is to become consciously one with God.
Everything else is insignificant and a dream, illusion.
God only cries when we stop looking. Sometimes he hides in a very good place, and it's almost impossible to find him there.
God has a plan for your life. And of course, our purpose is to try to figure out what that plan is.
Well, my purpose is to proclaim the Word of God on college and university campuses.
I mean, there's a lot of people not saved.
Teach other people that God is true and stuff.
To believe in Him and love Him and do everything that's right.
With an understanding of God the Creator. If He made and owns everything there is, then we are stewards and responsible to Him for how we use and manage that. And therefore our purpose is to manage well that which is entrusted to us.
But also to reflect in our own lives something of that godliness which God has given to us by example, in Christian terms, through the life of Jesus Christ.
God isn't an answer to a question. It's a fake answer. I mean, it's a word that you could answer any question by saying, because it was so. When 3-year-old children will frustrate you because they'll just keep asking you when you say something, they keep going, but why, but why, but why, but why. But that infinite regress is actually very informative. The fact is that God is an invention we use to stop infinite regress. It's an invention we use to feel as though we've got an answer to a question.
Now that I do exist, what am I going to do with the existence I have?
You have to create a purpose.
You must choose your own purpose.
We Satanists feel that you determine the purpose of your existence.
I have a purpose. I love teaching people.
I think the purpose is exactly no more, no less than what you make of it. To think that you would exist just to fulfill some arbitrary task invented by someone else, that to me would be truly pointless.
Everybody here was put here for a purpose. And what I know now, I think why I'm here is I was put here to teach the Numa language.
A few people are purposive, they've made purposes for themselves. But honestly, most of the people I know don't have any coherent purpose.
The specific things we do are expressions of our purpose, but I don't think that they're actually our purpose per se.
I believe that our fundamental purpose is the same as everyone's, which is to be ourselves as fully as we can.
Well, I think one thing that our society often denies is that we really are social creatures. And all this individualist nonsense about making yourself and making the most of yourself and being as happy as you can be in isolation from other people, I think is biologically, psychologically naive.
My purpose for existence is like to pursue my own goals and ambitions and dreams, and while doing that, having fun.
It's to enjoy the moon and the stars above our heads, have a warm sun on the green earth, and the sweet, refreshing rain.
According to the natural processes that designed us, our purpose is to maximize our number of living descendants. Now, of course, men aren't oysters, all right? Mankind can think, and therefore we can decide for ourselves what our purpose is.
We're here because we've got genes that have allowed our ancestors to survive, and those genes want to perpetuate themselves.
The only thing that separates humans from animals is that you can choose to breed or not breed. You actually have that choice.
I don't think anyone has a right to tell you why we're here.
I believe ultimately we are purposeless creatures.
Is there a purpose for whales to be here? I mean, that you might ask that question just as well. You know, has anything been accomplished by penguins?
Part of what it means to be human is to be religious. And what it means to be religious is to search for that meaning and purpose. And so I don't really believe there are really any atheists. That is, people who are not religious. There are certainly people who do not believe in God. But I would still argue that they have religious dimensions to their lives. And one for every person is, how do we make sense of all this?
I've decided that my purpose, the reason that I'm here, is to touch the lives of other people and make the world a better place for them.
To be a good person, we must practice. To practice, we must know how to practice. This is what the Dharma is.
If I need shelter and I want shelter, I should do my part to make sure others have shelter. If I'm hungry, I should do my part to make sure that others, in fact, can be fed. If I'm feeding myself, so that I take care of myself, I should take care of others.
We are here to serve and to help each other.
To help people find real peace and joy.
I want to be happy, I want to understand life, and I want to make everybody happy.
To realize the eternal happiness. This is our real nature.
What is happiness? Where do these feelings come from? How can we best find happiness?
They say the key to happiness, though, is living in the now. No future, no past. And it's so true, trust me. I was living in the now once a long time ago, and it was great. I always think about it, you know. It was... Maybe one day I'll live in the now again. I look forward to that. Okay.
When you're giving yourself, when you're living as a sacrifice for other people, for other beings, for this whole planet, you're going to be happy. Even if you're not happy, you're going to be happy. There's a part of you that's going to be fulfilled. So it's not happiness that I really think we should strive for, but it's this deep fulfillment, this deep, yes, I am here, I'm offering. And that's a type of happiness that's not transient or fleeting.
Feed the poor, clothe the hungry, or the other way around. Well, you can put clothes on the hungry people and feed the people without clothes.
We get happiness by sharing our happiness with others.
Bob has said, real happiness lies in making others happy.
If you are kind to others, then others will like to be with you. So if the people around you likes you, that will make your atmosphere so happy.
That's what everyone wants. That's what all religions advertise. You know, you follow this, when you die, you're gonna be happy forever, and blah, 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 which sounds pretty boring to me, being happy forever. I mean, I guess it really depends on the state of happiness, but for me, a world with only happiness is a world with no point. And I'd feel like a puppet. I'd feel controlled. I can't feel pain. I can't feel anything but this happiness. I'd hate it.
Potrebno da bude miran I da bude pošten. Da obikalja ove zli ljudi. I to je sreća.
I think to lead a mindful life as lovingly as you can, not to live in fear, not to want too much, because most of us have enough to be happy if we just look at it. You know, sometimes we think we'll be happier if. What was that question again?
Where do we find happiness?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. Lots and lots of chocolate. And I like to read a lot too, as you can probably tell, because I'm a lot smarter than people who don't read, I think.
Gnothi seauton, which is know yourself, was transcribed or written on the temple at Delphi. And this was, Socrates talked about this, that self-knowledge was the first step towards enlightenment and happiness.
Not to hammer anyone on the head with the old Nietzsche stick, but know thyself. Everyone can only answer that question for themselves.
I'd say to be honest with yourself is one of the keys to happiness.
Through the true and honest pursuit of being one's best self.
But in an ethical manner where you are not hurting others.
One can be happy if he discovers in himself a music of nature.
Happiness belongs to insight. If he attaches it with the external things, then it becomes a problem. Because when it is you are having the things you are happy, not having you are not happy. But when it is connected with insight, then the things or other will not affect your happiness.
Do you think that everything is coming from outside? Nothing comes from outside. Everything comes from inside. Desire comes from inside. Hatred comes from inside.
就是幸福也其实就是我们的欲望造成的。如果你总觉得自己那个欲望太大的话，总觉得自己。
They think they got to have all this stuff to be happy, and all. I can go out and find a can out in the yard and make something out of it. Perfectly happy. Chicken's happy. He doesn't do anything. Scratches a little, picks out in the yard.
Happiness to me is contentment. And contentment to me is to have what you need, not what you want. And so long as you've got what you need, then you should be happy.
I also derive a lot of happiness from pursuing my personal goals.
When one is successful in pursuing these various projects that one may have, then happiness is an outcome, a result of that, the satisfaction that comes with it. It's not something as easily pursued as an end in itself.
It depends what the happiness means to any person, but success is one of them in any kind. Even a criminal, when he succeeds in whatever he wants to do as a crime, he's happy at that time.
I think the best way to find happiness is to deny it exists. It's an impossible achievement, and that is such a great pressure off of you.
It's something that's actually really hard to achieve, and people are always looking for it. And there's that saying, you know what I mean? If you can't be happy with yourself, nobody else or nothing else can make you happy.
Krishnamurti's answer to what should we do to be happy would be to not be in conflict, to live fully each moment with all of one's energy, and not to lead two lives, the inner life and the outer life.
Yet, I really don't know anybody that's so evenly keeled that they're happy with themselves, that they just float through life, you know, on this bed of happiness. I think it's so hard to be happy with yourself that everybody's always looking for external stimuli to make them happy, whether it's another person or you buy yourself something. It's a hard thing to keep up.
It's okay to be happy. It takes getting used to, though, I'll tell you that. It's not easy, because you're used to not being happy.
Real happiness depends upon having something to live for beyond one's own personal happiness.
Happiness is determined by what's happening. So things that are happening can make you happy.
What we find in our research is that people think that good events are going to make them feel really good for a really long time, and bad events are going to have the opposite impact. And both of these predictions are wrong. Most events make very little difference, and the differences they make are extremely small and short-term. People who experience the good and people who experience the bad tend in a very short time to end up equally happy. Most things don't matter as much as we think they do.
People snorting coke are happier while they're snorting coke than people who aren't, right? It doesn't mean that you know they really are smarter, faster, and sexier than they were 3 minutes ago.
Is it a Rolls Royce? Is it 2.5 kids in a picket fence? Is it an Armani suit, or is it living on an island? Is it eating the best food in the world, or is it being green? Is it buying a carbon footprint from someone else, or getting, you know, a Prius? I don't know. How can I define your happiness?
don't do anything which will make you unhappy.
If you ask somebody, well, why do you want to feel good? They look at you like you're crazy. There's no answer to the question, why would you rather feel good than bad? What that tells you is you're down at the bottom. You're in the basement. You've gotten to the bottom motive, which no motive underlies. There's no asking, why do you want pleasure rather than pain? Plato was really clear about this. He said, why do we call some things good and some things bad? If you put them all together and look, you'll notice the good things give us pleasure, the bad things give us pain. Valuing things, that's what valuing means. When we say something matters, we're saying it's a source of human pleasure rather than a source of human pain. That's what happiness, that's what valuing means.
What makes you happy?
When I give my power away and ask that someone else hold my happiness, they can take that from you.
I think the best way to find happiness is have the guts to live your life the way you want to live it.
Human beings like to be in control. From the very moment their butts hit their very first diaper, they are looking for ways to control their environment. That's why, children are so excited when they build a stack of blocks and they push it down. It's like, why is that fun? It's because, look, I did it. I made this happen. It was up and now it's down and it's because of me. We like control, and indeed, when we lose it in our lives, evidence suggests that we become both psychologically and physically unwell. People die sooner. People are more depressed when they feel they can't control the events around them.
没有钱有这么快乐，那就是高兴的。像我老人家就是高兴的。像他妈妈了，像他儿子了，不会怪我，也不会闹我，也不会骂我，那就是好的。
There's lots of research on happiness. It turns out it's not related to money. Doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have, unless you're completely impoverished. It doesn't affect happiness. What does affect happiness is having a strong social support system, family, friends, love, affection, those kinds of things. And you can get that lots of different ways.
Happiness is being together. Being with my people. That's what makes me happy, is being with them and having a gathering besides the food.
One of the major predictors of happiness is how religious a person is. The religious people tend to be happier than non-religious people. But that seems to be, in my opinion, it seems to be coming from the fact that they've got some explanation that they can hang on to for those tough existential questions.
Само Бог, нече други нико да ти да стречу. Само Бог.
Religion does do well in terms of providing social support for members of their particular religious group. So to that extent, that's one of the good things that religion does, and that does help people be happy. But any social group can do that.
It's more contentment, because the truest happiness in the world is not going to come from the car you drive or the money in your bank account. It's going to come from your relationship with Christ.
What is the significance of all the colors and the painted ceilings?
The red color in China means happiness, because red color looks like the fire. So the evil spirit and the ghost and those dangerous animals are afraid of red color.
I don't think belief in God makes you happy. I think what it does is put you to sleep. And if that's happiness, okay, go to sleep.
How is somebody who only has one God happier or less happy than somebody who has 900 gods? The only difference between me and them is I have one less God.
Take God for the best that he is and not dig too deep in what's wrong with him, what's wrong with the system.
Some religions go out of their way to make people unhappy. It's sort of, the old idea of the doctor giving the patient a disease so that he can cure him. Seems to me an awful lot of religions make people unhappy so that they can then provide them with the antidote.
And then you look at a lot of Christians, and they're not very happy, and they believe in God. And I think it gets the Sheryl Crow song, if it makes you happy, then why are you so sad?
I think that people can be happy without a belief in God, but I think they can be happier with a belief in God.
宗教を知らなくても幸せにはなれるでしょ。それが世界の幸せか、万民の幸せかというとは別になります。
We won't ever be happy separate from God.
If human beings are fundamentally spiritual beings, it would be impossible to be completely happy without taking into consideration your capacity as a spiritual being.
There's a Baha'i quote that says that all the pain and suffering in the world comes from this material world, and that the spiritual world can bestow only joy. And so I think it's feeling that spiritual connection, and I think that's where our feeling of joy and happiness truly comes from.
And people who are super religious and super happy,
I just look at them like people on drugs. Really, I just think they're like on heroin.
Because for me, happiness is to please Almighty God. It is therefore like Islam doesn't prohibit material things, but materialism takes you away from God.
I live my life with what I have. I don't need religion to be happy.
So yeah, it is a wonderful world we live in. You know, breathing this fresh air, the sun rising, the sun setting, going out, enjoying the beach, enjoying the ocean. You can have a degree of happiness in this life without God. I will acknowledge that, but you're going to be miserable in the next life.
The whole point of Satanism is to enjoy your life and be happy. We don't have any external gods, and we are extremely happy people.
We can be happy, but the Bible uses the word joy. And joy is described as a fruit of the Spirit. It's something that, I don't know, can be joyful when you've got a disease. Can you be joyful when there's real disasters occurred? And the answer is probably yes, but you probably can't be happy.
Real joy comes from within, and that comes from the Holy Spirit, Jesus, that places that joy within you.
Haven't you wanted to be that crazy happy person that you've seen like in movies or something that believes that they're being, you know, carried around by the angel of God who's smothering them with nothing but endless love, you know? If you believe in something, it is real.
Боже мой, мой душман да буде живи и здрави и никога деца, а да живим я, да будем я здрава на мою ови, што сам ја направила со овие 10 прста.
お釈迦様の時代に戻ります。どうして私たちが存在するのか、それについてお釈迦様は何も言ってません。私たちが存在してしまっているという事実をもとに、その今いる私たちがどのように幸せな生活を作るのか、これを大切だって言いました。
世界只要和平，这就是福；国家富强，这就是福；一个家庭这个和睦，这就是福。
Om Shanti means that I am a peaceful soul. So I want, when I say to Om Shanti to you, I want that you should be a peaceful soul. We want to give them the knowledge of love, peace, happiness. We want that they change their lifestyle and be happy.
总体来说，平安就是福。
Most of what we do in our society is distraction, television and social things, and it's all about distracting ourselves from our mind, in which meditation is another way to, instead of distracting ourselves, you quiet yourself.
शांति नहीं मिलती है। प्रसन्नता तो एक ऐसी चीज़ है, गाड़ी ले आया आदमी प्रसन्न हो गया, कोई मकान मिल गया आदमी प्रसन्न हो गया, कोई वस्तु मिल गया, अब ये जैसे अब ये हो रहा है तो मैं इसी से प्रसन्न हो गया। कोई अच्छी बात हुई तो वो प्रसन्न चीज़ अलग होता है, प्रसन्नता का चीज़ अलग होता है। और दूसरा शांति चीज़, शांति तो भगवान के चरणों में ही मिलती है।
Ultimate happiness, that is called the blissful happiness. Unchangeable, that is ultimate happiness. That comes from only understanding the nature of your mind.
I think our purpose in life is to be at peace within our mind, and to be free from our mind. Because our mind is always busy. And whenever our mind is quiet, then we're happier. And it's quieted by distraction, or it's quieted through things like inner peace.
We know that a great many writers and physicists, for that matter, are manic depressive. They're not happy. They're too happy or miserable. Yet we can't deny that they contribute a great deal to society. On the other hand, you can have somebody who goes to church every Sunday, is perfectly content with a lot, but actually doesn't contribute very much.
Happiness seems to be related to several different neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin. We know that when they're released in the brain, they do create euphoric kinds of feelings. But again, happiness, as with all of these emotions, is on a continuum. So a big release of dopamine, which you get like from cocaine, gives you a euphoria. But whether or not that's the same thing as just being happy by reading a cartoon or reading a joke, people have tried to study that, and I don't think the jury is really back yet on what's the actual cause of something that is humorous and funny to us and makes us feel happy and content.
Is happiness really just about the right brain cocktail?
Yes. Happiness is really just a brain state. But saying it's just a brain state is saying like your mother is just a mother. It's a very special brain state, and very few things can get the brain in that state. No drug can put the brain in the same state that it's in when you see your granddaughter run across a field yelling, "Grandpa, hi!"
The experience we call excitement, that feeling in the body, is actually the energetic vibration of our true natural selves.
And I agree very much with Joseph Campbell when he said that people aren't looking for a meaning in life. What they're looking for is an experience of being alive. When you're in love, when you're happy, when you're fully engaged in what life can be, you don't question what's going on. You know, what's the meaning of this love?
Nobody can really be happy. You could have moments of happiness, moments of joy, but life is very difficult unless you're a total idiot. Then you can be happy. So if you want to shut down the reality of life and stop living it fully, you can be happy. But that's idiocy. But if you're going to live a full life, then all you can hope for is moments of happiness, moments. The rest of the time, there's going to be sickness, there's going to be aging, there's going to be death, there's going to be loss, there's going to be all kinds of things which you have to deal with. And within dealing with that, you suddenly find moments of love, romantic love, a good meal. You write a book and it's accepted and you feel good for a few moments. Happiness is not something that you try to achieve. It's a false objective.
Anyone who chases happiness will also have to experience misery. They are inseparable. They are flip sides of the coin.
Too often, especially if you listen to some of this self-help culture, you're supposed to always be happy and think positive thoughts. Well, that's actually hell. Because whether it's always positive thoughts or always bad thoughts, you find a way to limit yourself and imprison yourself. A real good existence is to be happy, sad, depressed, angry, ashamed, guilty, pride, all these things. You can imagine a crayon box. And when you were a kid, the best crayon box you could get when I was a kid was those big 64 ones. That was much better than the ones they had passed out for free that only had 8 crayons in it. Experience should allow you to feel all those things.
How do you find peace in India with all the horns honking?
By patience.
What is love?
A scientific answer to that is love is an emotional state which tends to keep you bonded to a single individual to the mutual benefit of raising surviving offspring.
爱在道教里面来说，只能就说慈悲嘛。
The ability of a person to selflessly give for the benefit of another. To me, that's the ultimate definition of love.
Love is compassion and admiration magnified many times.
You just have to care very, very deeply about them and be willing to risk almost anything for them. That's when you can say you really love something.
Love is connected with the soul. Soul has got compassion. Compassion is expressed in love.
Love is the essential vibration of existence itself.
Love is the need of human being because human being cannot survive alone.
Love is openness. Openness between myself and you.
What is love?
Love is an emotion that allows a human being to dissolve the boundary between that person and another person.
愛とは許すことだと思ってます。許すこと。
You certainly portray several kinds of love in your play.
Love is complete and utter peace and concern for peace of others.
Or you can give the scientist's answer to that, which is to say, despite the fact that I was formed by natural selection, I can still feel. And, you know, love is that wonderful emotion you have when you're with the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with.
For males, usually means you yearn for that person until you mate with them, and then it's over, and then you're yearning for somebody else. I mean, that's the chimpanzee pattern of behavior. For females, it's a different pattern. I mean, we look at the native behavior of primates that are not human, and we know what love is, speaking in a biochemical sense. But then we also talk about the love of parents for children, which is a different thing. It's more altruistic. It's a recognition that the child is more important than the adult.
What is love?
Love is the feeling that you have toward those who are genetically similar to you, toward your wife who is going to help you reproduce your genes and so forth.
I don't think there was love when mankind began. I think there was only stay alive. Do anything to stay alive. Love helped a little bit. It brought people together. Now, they didn't come together and say, I love you, therefore I want to be with you. No. They said, I have to be with you because two are easier to navigate the wilds of this earth than one.
A cold, scientific view of it would say it's another Darwinian adaptation.
Emotions are built into us by natural selection for very good reasons. Different reasons in the case of sexual love, parental love, brotherly love, what the Greeks called agape.
When people have done brain scans where people are looking at a loved one, it tends to activate some of the real emotional centers of the brain, which certainly makes some sense. It turns out that when you are first in love with somebody in those first 6 to 12 months, that you get a different response in the brain than you do after you've been in love with somebody for many, many years. So there's this kind of way in which love also evolves and changes over time.
I feel it myself. I know what it's like to love. It certainly doesn't require, invoke or justify any kind of supernatural belief.
It is an internal feeling, and it could be chemicals. Of course, at the bottom, it's some kind of biochemical thing, but we don't really care about that. We're much more interested in sort of how people interact with each other.
Then there is the whole physical and physiological elements that are involved with the rituals that go with that, and the physiological feelings that one has when one engages in sexual activity with somebody else, the release of different hormones and things like oxytocin, which help to create a very strong attachment kind of experience with people.
Love at the reducible level is a whole lot of hormones and neurons firing in the right way. And love for me, experientially then, is that feeling that the poets try to capture but never do, that I'm not going to be able to capture, that you probably know what I'm talking about, but is that higher order feeling that we have when we're ultimately compassionate and wanting to connect with another human being.
Love. You can't define love. We can feel about love. We can't define love. Can you? It is a connection. It is a connection with my heart.
Like all emotions, it's defined as that you know what I mean feeling. It's the feeling we have, and we describe it to each other, and we describe its antecedents, and everybody nods and says, oh yeah, that feeling. I know what you mean by love. Certainly don't have to have a concept of or a belief in God to know anything about love.
Love is a life force. And I think all love as a life force has its origin in God.
So the Buddha has the love towards all sentient beings as equal, the same as that. So therefore this is called the love, the ultimate love.
Yes, God loves everybody, but for God's love to do you any good, you've got to love Him in return.
God doesn't want to make you love Him. That's not true love. You have to love God yourself, and then it's the real thing. And that feeling of love inside of you is nirvana.
Love is self-sacrifice, self-denial. A synonym for love would be benevolence. It's good-willing. It's willing the highest good of all beings in the universe, especially God.
God is love, no? And love is God. So seeking means you don't recognize it, which is there.
When I realized that I was different, I read all the Bible verses, they're really easy to look up if you have the index in your Bible. And I looked at each one of them and I'm like, okay, I don't know what it really means when that was written, but all I know is inside me that it doesn't feel wrong. And so I never had a problem with being a Christian, thinking that God didn't love me. I guess I maybe was just living in a different world and just kind of ignored those scriptures. But I figured what I felt for another person was love, and I couldn't be wrong. If God is love, and I'm loving this person who happens to be a girl, that it's not wrong.
God had said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have created mankind and Jinnat so that he can realize me. and he loves every human being 7 times better than mother.
The God is the source of love. Just like a father loves his son. For example, I'll give you, when a baby cries, he doesn't cry milk, milk, he just cries. But the mother knows the baby is crying for milk. Right? The word milk, he cannot even utter, he's that small baby. But the mother loves the baby, that's why she goes and open her breast and feed the milk. Now, same way, we know God loves us. My father, my parents loves me. But we cannot understand that love, but he is source of the love. You have to take that love from him. Without him, there is no love.
Love is only a theoretical word. Service is the practical application of the word love. So if you wish to be in love with God, you must love his creations equally and serve them.
I describe love as one who keeps his duty to his creator and his duty to humanity. One who serves humanity properly. Because you can say, I love you, but not be responsible.
If you take, for example, St. Paul's great treatise on love in 1 Corinthians 13, all the things he says about love, love is patient and kind, love does not want its own way, love is not easily angered, etc. All those things are actually not about how we feel towards one another, they are about how we behave towards one another. C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity says, do not waste your time worrying about whether you love someone. Behave as if you did. When you behave as if you did, you will find yourself loving them more. If you behave as if you didn't, you will find yourself loving them less.
Ultimately, love is opening yourself so wide that there is no separation between yourself and all of existence. You become that very thing that existence is arising in. So love is really, how close can I be to you? To me, hell is the distance from my heart to your heart, or anyone else's heart. The further apart my heart is to another, that's hell.
Love is the key to our existence, because without it, life wouldn't really be worth living. It wouldn't be enjoyable. It wouldn't be fulfilling. It's love that makes life fulfilling. Now, maybe someday I'll meet some alien species that will disagree with me on that, and it will present something else other than love that makes its life fulfilling or whatever. I won't know that until I meet this creature. But for us, for human beings, this is what really is the pinnacle of our existence and makes life so truly enjoyable. I mean, it's where true happiness comes from. It's a happiness greater than any other form of pleasure that we know.
Of course, love is part and parcel of our existence, and we'd hate to live without it. It's part of the purpose of being. Survival, replication, evolution are the things that life seems to be all about. But there's also what makes it worthwhile. And love is one of those.
Genuine love, one might argue, and it has been argued, is based on the capacity to see something in the other that perhaps even the other doesn't know about him or herself, and to embrace that possibility, celebrate that possibility, and thereby help to make that become manifest.
Love is, I think, an ultimate state of relaxing. And you can feel it when you're around someone else that you're comfortable with. You can feel it when you're doing something you enjoy.
I just know that sometimes I can feel my heart. Sometimes I can feel the heart of someone else. And that's not a physical thing. That seems spiritual. It's composed of love, and love is invisible and yet so powerful. And so sometimes when I feel that human connection, which quickly transcends into spiritual connection for me, I believe there's something here that's good and that's nurturing to all things. And yet it quickly disappears, and I'm left with all the doubt, the doubt which always comes from fear, and fear blocks out love.
People often think the opposite of love is hate. No, opposite of love is indifference. The opposite of love is you don't care. The things you hate, you've got some love for. You've got some real investment.
Is there a magical, mystical element to love?
If you take kind of the supernatural element out of it, it becomes more poignant. Understanding how connection and compassion work as love in the brain to other people doesn't make it less profound. It actually makes it more profound and more poignant. It says, it's a love poem, P-O-M-E-S. I love you, you love me. Let's have fun and give hugs and kisses. So let's give some love now. Oh.
Is there something inherent in the human species that leads us to conflict that we will always have?
No. I think this real problems for human beings began when we invented agriculture, when we settled down, when we stopped wandering. That was what? Only 15,000 years ago. So we're new at this, and we haven't quite yet figured out how to live, how to share the way we shared when we were hunter-gatherers.
What's happened since humans first came onto the scene is that we've populated the globe. So various groups that were once nomadic in nature lived very sort of isolated existences, unusual for one tribe to come against the next. There was minimized conflict. Now we live in a global society. We have a mix of different races, different cultures, and most dangerous yet, different religions.
And I say it's failure to follow the teachings of Christ that we have war. If everyone loved their enemy, then there'd be no more war, would there?
As far as peace to be maintained, if you follow the commandments of Almighty God, there has to be peace. Whether you're living in America, there's no different rule. Whether you're living in India, or living in Saudi Arabia, or living in Europe, if you follow the rule of God, Almighty God. And if everyone follows the scriptures, we may differ also, no problem, but there'll be peace.
Every religion represents an inherent threat to every other religion.
Like Rafiddin, Attabayina Rusdu from Quran.
You know, and certainly one answer that some people will give you is to first eliminate religion, to eliminate boundaries, to eliminate the tribal divisions that keep us angry at each other, keep us believing that one group is better than the other. I think a more realistic answer is to eliminate poverty and social inequality and social injustice. It's very hard to imagine countries full of people with microwave ovens and 401k plans making war on each other. Democracies don't make war on each other. So we do know it's possible for countries, nations, people to enter a state in which war is extremely unlikely, if not unthinkable.
Što više popovi, što više vere, više ubistva. Što više vere, više ubistva. Najbolje jedno da budeš, na primjer, jedan svet smo, ali popovi su izmislili toliko da bi bio podjela da dođemo do ratova. Jer ako ne bi bili ratovi, ne bi bila raja sirotinja, na primjer, nema kome da proda oružje, nema kome da proda.
We should tell them that God is one. Neither your God is different and not me. The God is same. And you are a human, I am also the same. We are all creation of Him.
I was at the United Nations some years ago at a conference, and there was this lady who came up and she started screaming, like, there is no peace in the world. We want peace. Where is the peace? And there was obviously no peace inside her, you know. So if these are going to be the peacemakers, I don't see, you know, any peace coming to the planet anytime soon. So it needs to be, one needs to be peaceful from inside.
You take the holy prophets and you put them together around a table and sit them up there in the sky looking down on us. Now, it doesn't matter who they are, any of the deities that have been worshipped or any of the holy prophets who've been worshipped over a millennium of time, sit them all down at the same table, get them to look down at us, and you know what they're going to do? One's going to nudge the other and say, oi, see what it's saying about you? Yeah, look what it's saying about you. But I don't see them fighting. I don't see them bashing each other over the head. I think if there's any religious arguments, it's us that have invented them, not the deities.
There are people who just want power, but at the same time, that's not about religion. Those struggles are not about religion. The struggle of the United States against Iraq is not about religion. It's about oil. I mean, the struggle in Ireland between the so-called Catholics and the Protestants, that was not about religion. That was about English imperialism, which was there 700 years. So, I mean, what religion does is simply cover the material basis for those struggles. You know, the struggles are not about God. You know, how would you know which God won, by which human being was left standing in a war? So that would say that God won. You know, it's just, that's absurd, all that stuff. It's absurd.
The degree to which I felt connected to other people was always the degree to which I understood them. So I often find that people who have a view of another people don't know those people very well at all. They've built a construct in their mind of who those people are. Well, go talk to them, hang out with them, live with them a little bit. I think that most people will find that other people aren't so different from themselves. I think, look, I mean, most of us want to have a place to live and sleep, keep the cold out, have something to eat.
We spend most of our time getting food, clothing, and shelter, I mean, which distinguishes us from, I guess, lower forms of life who spend all their time getting food and shelter, you know. There's some forms of life that spend all their time getting food, that never develop anything. But the human ability to think and reflect is what's undeveloped. And so of all the hours we have to spend making a living, you know, tending to those kind of mundane things, actually subtracts from the time that we could spend thinking, and the subtraction of that time from thinking actually is what makes our lives limited, even probably physically, because we haven't thought enough about how to extend it, you know. And certainly it means that we don't understand much about where we are because we haven't thought about it as much as we should.
Today what we see around us is a lot of stress, violence. There is domestic violence and societal violence. As we have advanced in technology, somewhere we have forgotten the human values. Somewhere there is not enough encouragement for spirituality. That's what I feel is needed today, that we need to bring about the spiritual aspect of human life.
As long as we have egos, the ego's job is to create constructs of differentiation. So there will always be differences, and we're going to create clubs and alliances through which we are similar and through which we are different. Even within a club where we're saying we're similar, we're white men who have respectable jobs and we live in Los Angeles, we're still going to make gradations that I make more money than you, my wife is better looking than your wife, I eat at better restaurants, and I could throw a ball farther.
नहीं उसने गलत किया जैसे जलन होता है ना तभी झगड़ा होता है अगर किसी को जलन नहीं हो शांति हो तो झगड़ा कभी नहीं होगा
是提倡在实践上你应该首先爱自己的家庭的人。他说人是一个现实的，如果你连自己的家庭的人都不能够爱，你怎么样可以去爱其他的人呢？
Is culture a good thing? Should different cultures be preserved?
There's no need for difference of culture, difference of opinion to produce conflict.
Conflict is due to the refusal to accept real differences in culture. I mean, yeah, they're different than we are, but they're wrong and we're right. But really accepting the concept of culture is saying, look, they have their way of doing things, we have our way of doing things. So let's figure out an arrangement so that they can do what they do and we do what we do and we don't get in each other's face.
The fact that I disagree with you doesn't mean I don't like you. Right? It just means I disagree with you. I'm allowed to disagree with you. If you start shooting at me, I think I'd be sort of stupid not to try to shoot back.
Wherever you go around the world, there's always one tribe that has long eyelashes and another tribe that has short eyelashes, and they hate each other because of that. It could be here in America, within the hip-hop community, or within the artist community, or within the film community, or wherever.
Remember, there's more difference between people in a culture than there is between that culture and another culture, a foreign culture.
I remember going to China, right? I was at the Wall of China and I saw this guy in this green, you know, sort of communist thing with the hat and all that stuff. And the story I had told myself about the Chinese was that, well, they'll probably be harder to get to know, a little bit inscrutable, kind of formal, a little bit maybe more serious. You know, I had whatever cultural prejudices I had. And I was at the Wall of China with this guard. And I walked up to the wall and he looked at me and said, where are you from? And I said, the USA. He laughed and said, USA, #1, and he punched me in the arm. And we started laughing and joking around with each other in his broken English. And I said, this is really the human experience. It was so simple. My story went away. His story about Americans probably went away, and we created a new one. And it was our common humanity that brought us together.
For Satanists, a diversity of culture is something that we think is fascinating and wonderful.
because it increases the potential for unique experiences. However, when there is a culture that has poisonous and negative behavior enshrined in it, that's something that we could possibly do without. Cultures that remove female genitalia before women are mature enough to experience sexuality, that's a bad thing, and there should be no respect for that.
There's a limit to what you have to tolerate. You don't have to be tolerant of someone else's intolerance of you.
And it's only rarely when I see somebody who has an agenda, somebody who wants to put themselves in a position of power or something, who perverts what people are and tells them a story, and that what causes great suffering. And sometimes it's easy to believe a story if you're suffering.
It's not so much individual cultures that cause strife, it's a lack of appreciation of other cultures that cause strife.
The world needs diversity, and we need to honor diversity. We need to honor all different cultures. But what we really lack is education in human values. We are not teaching people how to be friendly, how to cooperate, see the other points, other person's point of view.
We need to preserve the diversity of culture. It's important, just as diversity in ecological systems, diversity in biological species is important. I mean, if you decrease the diversity in an ecosystem, what happens? That ecosystem eventually dies out. Likewise, in terms of culture, if you decrease the diversity of culture, if you decrease the number of ideas and the beliefs out there, eventually that culture dies out. On a global scale right now, we see a threat to diversity because we have a global capitalist order that's emerging, and in fact homogeneity, not diversity, tends to be the order of the day.
I think that's happening naturally. And we're evolving into a world homogeneity. I think that it's just, we're in the early stages of it, you know. But here in America, you know, I think we're becoming more homogenous and much more apparent, I think, in the mix, especially in Los Angeles. Now, do we all get along? You know, does it all? You know, no. Cultures collide. You know, there are problems, but it's happening. That evolution is happening.
In fact, all the wars are happening because people want to homogenize the culture. You know, they want to make everything look alike.
Biologically, we are similar. We are homogeneous. But psychologically, we create distance because that gives us a specific pride in existence.
Culture can't be done away with because we're born into it. The very person, the very thing that we are as a human being is at least to some degree defined by culture.
Our culture doesn't have to be preserved because it is what we do, it is what we are. And our culture includes McDonald's and Stephen King as much as it includes John Updike and very fine restaurants.
What can we do to uplift humanity, to stop the conflict between various groups of people?
I was in Iran recently, and when I was in Iran, people kept telling me in 10 years' time, there's going to be real democracy in Iran. Everything was going to be okay, and a wide class of people, I'm not talking about scientists, a wide class of people. And my reaction to that was, yes, that will be so if they're not either pretending to be or actually building a nuclear bomb. Because if they are building a nuclear bomb, it will fall right into the hands of their mullahs on the one hand and our regime on the other hand. And so one of the real problems that I see is that the dangers are also seen as advantageous to sometimes to our leaders.
We're not above nature. We're, as humans, we're caretakers of this earth, Mother Earth. And what we do to this Mother Earth, it's going to come back on us, humans.
I think it starts at home with oneself and one's relation to one's family and friends. From there, one can bring good and happiness and joy into the world in one's dealings with everyone and take care of the needy.
We don't have to aim at solving the world's problems. You know, there are problems in your own community that need to be solved.
I'm doing my best to improve humanity. I'm doing it by persuasion, of course. I don't know any other way.
Well, I suppose we can all do something. We can't
and do everything. We have very limited power and influence, but if everybody would use their power and influence, it would be a lot better universe than it is.
The time has come when the 5% of the world's population who are incredibly wealthy and who could support probably between 50 to 70 nations between themselves should give some of that to the people who are starving. Otherwise, to be quite honest, you know, what kind of misery is that kind of life?
Gandhi said, don't give alms to beggars, but give them work. He always believed in that.
The thing we would be criticized for the most harshly is our calm acceptance of a world with such incredibly different standards of living. You know, a world in which, you know, some people drive Ferraris while other people live under a bush. You know, and their children starve.
儒家关于社会和谐的观念呢，是跟他每一个人呢要在他一个合适的位置有关系。就是他基本上认为呢，就是每个人在这个社会里面呢，他有他自己一个合适的位置，你就在这个位置上呢做好你的工作。
And I was just downtown yesterday, and I saw a brother laying in the streets. Guess what I did? I laid down with him, and I had on a suit, and he was like, "Man, why you laying on the ground?" I said, "You on the ground? I'll get up if you get up." And he stood up. And I saw him struggling, standing up. So I stood up. I said, "Pull up on me, brother." And I pulled him up. And I held him. And I just said, "Brother, I don't have much time. I just wanted you to know I saw you laying there, and it brought tears. And I don't have much, but if there's anything I could do to serve you." Well, he said, "Well, I'm hungry." I said, "Oh, yeah?" He said, "Well, give me some money." I said, "I thought you was hungry. Why you want money?" He said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, let me go buy you something to eat." See? And I went and bought him something to eat. You see, I wish I could have had somewhere to take him. I don't have that now. That's something I'm working on, but that's service.
We can survive happily or in harmony if we take care of each other. It is illogical to believe that some people can live in peace and prosperity and happiness while others will suffer.
People in the third world don't have Social Security, they have kids. And since the mortality is high, they have to have a lot of kids to make sure there's some going to be alive when they get old. If we can make them certain that they can have a few kids and they'll still survive to old age, as in Japan or the United States, then the birth rates will fall. So it's, you know, it's in our own interest.
One of the greatest challenges we face right now is the great disparity in resources among the various populations of the earth. If you look at where the population growth rate is small or even negative, it is in the better educated, more affluent countries of the earth. The population is growing most rapidly in the other countries, the more disadvantaged places, the ones less well educated. So I think ignorance is the fertile breeding ground not only of war, but of all sorts of unpleasant things.
The common concept is education is the answer. Well, it's who does the educating and what are you educating?
The human brain has undergone a vast architectural overhaul in just the last 2 million years. And the main revolution in our architecture is the addition of this part right up front, the aptly named frontal lobes right behind our foreheads. It's what pushed our foreheads out in the last 2 million years. What does this apparatus do? Well, it does all sorts of things. I mean, it's implicated in almost everything interesting about human beings. But one of the things it allows us to do is to think about the future, project ourselves into the future, imagine what it's going to feel like down the road. Because we can do this, we can plan, we can look ahead, we can say, gosh, if we do this today, it's going to be really bad for us tomorrow. You probably noticed that almost every important social problem is a result of not doing that well enough. Almost every problem we are creating for our species is a result of not looking down the timeline, seeing where our behavior today will lead us tomorrow and taking action to prevent it. Why? Well, it's a new trick. I mean, we're rookies. We're just getting the hang of this looking into the future stuff. We've been at it for 2 million years. That's the blink of an eye in evolutionary time. We're not very good at it, but we better get good at it soon because we're not going to be around very long to keep practicing.
People in my generation, we don't think about ourselves. We're always thinking about the future, children yet unborn, what are they going to have when we destroy everything?
There are many ways in which people are influenced, and that then seeing the examples of people who rise up above that, like Viktor Frankl and his experiences in Auschwitz, that he was able to come away from that and say, yeah, I've learned a lot from that. And you know, he developed a therapy, a logotherapy, which was probably very useful. But he was able to take this hideous, you know, terrible event and make something positive of it.
The biggest danger is human nature, and the thing that might help us is to finally destroy the need for religion.
Well, it all starts with being motivated by loving God and loving your neighbor. So walk in love and express your love for others, one person at a time.
Having the faith in each other, love each other, come along with each other, compromise sometimes. So that stops everything, every problem. Love your neighbors, regardless what it is.
Is the world a better place for having had human beings in it?
No, they're tearing it all up. It's like a bunch of fire ants eating the whole world up.
Doesn't that seem like kind of an inane question?
From whose point of view?
Wintertime be better spent clearing debris and brush out of the gutter?
Ecologically, no.
If there were no human beings here, no one would ever be able to ask that question.
It's a more interesting place.
I think it's great that I'm here.
Well, I think the only answer to that has got to be yes, but provisionally.
It's a more colorful place.
I don't think the planet cares.
I wouldn't call it a better place. I don't think there's one species that if they had their, you know, if they could vote in the matter, would vote for our survival.
Look at us. Look at the variety. Look at the challenges. Look at everything that's around. How could it not be?
What do you think has been accomplished by having human beings here?
Great food. We don't have to walk. We can drive an automobile.
The great achievements of humanity are really quite remarkable. I personally wouldn't include the motor car among them, but looking at the Taj Mahal or Monet's water lilies.
You think about the incredible ability of humankind to produce, you know, wonderful music, or buildings like this, or paintings, or climbing Mount Everest, or the sort of technological inventions that astonish and astound us. I think the ability of humankind to develop and explore and to reach boundaries that sometimes we find breathtaking, I think has enhanced the world. But nevertheless, clearly humankind have wrought great destruction.
I think this planet would be a lovely place to visit if only we didn't live here. What we seem to have done, as far as I can see, is lost our way, and we seem to be, instead of part of this planet, we seem to be setting ourselves apart from this planet, which is why paganism appeals to me, because I am part of the land.
Is the Earth a better place because of the existence of frogs? You can't really say it is or it isn't. It's just that I like it better because there have been frogs and because the role that frogs have played in nature.
Our presence here has not made it better for any species other than cats, dogs, cows. Things we pet or things we eat. All of those species have flourished as a result of us coming. The millions of other species have not.
I'm a dog person. I think we're a better place with dogs.
Do you think the world is a better place for having had human beings in it?
Oh, you're full of tough questions, aren't you? I thought you were going to say for having gay people in it. I was going to say, yeah, man, sure.
It would be a meaningless place without mankind in it. It's only the presence of human beings that makes this world have any meaning. Otherwise, it's just a vast terrarium.
The whole purpose is ultimately what humans do. So the world without humans would be sort of pointless because animals couldn't do that unique thing that humans do, which is called progress.
The world would be quite pointless without human beings
without Jesus Christ.
If he thought it would have been a better place with just by letting it be inhabited with the prehistoric creatures, he would have left there. But he saw need for man.
The world is a wonderful place when you're connected to the Lord.
Every stage of creation, God says, oh, it is good. And then he creates human beings, and then it's just not good, but it's very good.
We're the crowning achievement of his creation.
God appears to like this story. This is a work of art of his, this whole universe, and he does appear to find it entertaining. The show has been going on for a long time, and he doesn't appear to be getting tired of it. In fact, he keeps adding to the cast.
Now, would it have been better if that crowning achievement wasn't there? Many would say yes. In fact, you'd think some of the environmentalist extremists would think that, hey, the world would be better off if the people weren't even here.
See, the environmentalist, he looks at a tree, is all he sees basically is a tree. When I look at a tree, I see a house. I see maybe paper products coming out of that tree. I see Bibles.
I don't think that way because we're the crowning creation. Now, it's a pretty flawed creation because we bring a lot of grief upon ourselves and upon a lot of other things, probably bring God a lot of sorrow, a lot of grief because of some of the actions we take.
That's a very hard question because in Genesis it said God repented that he ever made man because of the way we treated each other, the evil that we brought to each other. But yet he loved us so much that he gave us a way out.
No, the world I do not see as a better place. I see this as a proving grounds, as a process to God's ultimate end. I think in the end there will be a better world, but it's when God separates the sheep from the goats, when the righteous are allowed to reign the way that they are, then that'll work.
It's a better place for having had the righteous here. There are people that are so wicked, man, they are not favorable, but we get a chance to see wickedness expressed in some of the most vilest of ways. And until human being, even myself, until I got sick of my sins, you gotta grow sick of it. You gotta grow to hate the negativity that comes out of self. Until man get dissatisfied with this wicked world, it's gonna remain.
I think we're essentially kind of a little bit of a mold on this planet. I mean, there have been much more successful life forms here. At some point, we haven't developed that capability yet, but if, like I said, it was a little bit of effort, it was a lot of effort, we can split this planet in two, then the world will probably be worse off for having had human beings in it. But then you have to think about a bigger picture. So what if the Earth is split in two and floats away? It's a big galaxy and a big universe.
The world is certainly a better place for human beings from having human beings in it.
One of my sisters once said my mother had gotten sick, and she said, Mom never should have had the last 3 children. And I said, that's me. I'm glad she had me.
It's me too.
I'm enjoying my life on Earth.
Well, that's such a difficult question because as a human being, I naturally relish my life as a human being, and I love my species, and I'm glad it's here. So I wouldn't wish it not to be here for that reason.
As a human, as a fellow human, I have to answer yes. I think we're great. I think I'm great, all my friends are great. There's a lot of greatness in my fellow humanity.
On the other hand, I think it could be said that for many of the other species, at least, the world was a better place without us.
Ask the dozens of animals that have gone extinct just during the course of our conversation. They'd probably say no. Yeah, because you can't separate humans from the world. We're a product of the world, and the world's a product of us.
Remember that man is the world. When I say man, I mean manifestation. And even the moment where human beings are being destroyed as a race, we are just being integrated into a higher form of intelligence that is existence. And there ultimately is no better off or worse off, because we are that space in which we dwell.
The cosmos is just this cold, uncaring place. It's just stars and planets and comets and stuff, and there's nobody out there that cares.
So for the first time, as far as we know, anywhere ever, there's a species that could colonize the entire cosmos. And a species with intelligence and self-awareness that's conscious, that has a moral conscience. So in that sense, the universe could be a better place for us and for itself by us existing.
It would be a shame if a universe which has such an ingenious set of rules which govern it had no one in it which have the capacity to understand those rules and really appreciate them. It'd be like a fine painting with no one to observe it.
Earlier you asked me about consciousness, and I thought that that is the greatest gift that is bestowed upon us as human beings. Now you ask me, is the world a better place for having us here? Well, the kind of consciousness I am talking about has only been observed in humans. And since I place such an enormous value on that consciousness, yeah, I think the world's a better place for us having come along.
无非私人这个而水语，就是一定要跟这个世界和这个世界的人们生活在一起。
一些和谐，我认为我们这个地球是我们最美好的家园。
This is the only place I have to live. This is the good place. We should make it good.
There is no good or bad without humans. Humans create good and bad. I mean, it's our values that define what's good and bad.
My perspective on the world is inevitably a human perspective. And so the question is, well, okay, how can we make the world a better place with the humans?
The world is a better place when we recognize that our humanity is part of the unfolding nature of this planet.
We are a triumph of the universe. It's possible that Earth is going to have to serve its purpose in raising us so that we can be here for the universe. We may have a larger role in colonizing the galaxy.
We are probably one of the least important biological species on this planet to maintain the ecosphere, to maintain the magic of this world. When we see it from that perspective, we'll humble ourselves to the place where we become who we truly are, which is the servant of the unfolding of magic on this planet and not the masters of it.
It's better to have life on the planet than to have a bunch of waves and rocks. And it's better to have intelligent, complex life than to have a bunch of amoebae. And so we're sort of the continuation of the developing complexity of life, the emergence of intelligence, and it would be wrong to thwart that. So I think by and large, yes, it's good we're here.
Yes, the world is a better place by having human beings. I don't know where that question comes from. See, we just all have dinosaurs. Yeah, humans didn't do that bad.
Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't discussed?
Absolutely not. You've discussed just about everything you could possibly discuss, and then some. Great, 3 in the morning. Woo! He just walks in, just want to do an interview, didn't tell me anything about anything, and enjoyed every minute of it.
Can you tell me in one sentence your philosophy for living?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Well, I think it's really to pay attention and try to figure out how things work. That is, the world is a very interesting place. The physical world, the biological world is a very interesting and inspiring place.
People are fascinating. You just look at the person sitting next to you, listen to what they're saying, pay attention. You really, it's a whole universe to explore that is never boring.
There's a real pleasure to going out on a dark night and looking up at the Milky Way, looking at the stars. And I think the more you understand what the stars are, that is, understanding that a star is really a nuclear furnace that's generating energy, it seems to me that's better than thinking it is a god in a chariot going across the sky. I think that things are not kind of diminished by understanding them. I think they are enhanced.
I just sometimes want to rattle someone and just be like, do you even know how interesting you are? Most people don't.
By understanding yourself, you're understanding your own mind, the way you relate. And it's in that relationship with another that one can find out what one really is. And as you uncover what you are, then you understand what life really means to you.
Well, this is my philosophy. Get a Bible, read it, and live the way it tells you to live. I mean, that's our roadmap. As long as you live by that and you accept God and you live for Him, then everything else will fall into place. But He's got to be number one. Because if He's not number one, then you don't have anything to live for.
Man should obey God and keep His commandment. Day in, day out.
The 10 Commandments will give you what you need if you can follow them.
Just really one word, submission. Submit to your authorities, submit to your spouse, submit to your elders. And that's not talking about being a beaten down dog, like you're a little cowering person. When you submit to people and submit to authority and submit to the Lord, basically, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom in your life.
Either you believe we came from somewhere, we're here for a reason and we're going someplace, or you can believe we came from nowhere, we're here for no reason and we're going nowhere. If you look at it that way in terms of a search for God, this is what I tell myself. It's like, it just keeps it real simple. It's like it's almost more enjoyable to live believing that we came from somewhere, I don't know where, We're here for some reason, I don't know what, and we're going somewhere, I don't know where again. I like to believe that. I like the idea that maybe there's some kind of well, not so much that you go to heaven or whatever, but if there is this available power that exists in the world, if one opens itself to it, call it God. And I've experienced things like that. I've experienced that. And it always has to do with transcending my own personal, physical, mental self.
But people get sucked into stuff because they want to believe it. They're looking for something better. They want to believe, whether it's religion or a product that comes on TV and goes, look what this product does. It does this. Available only on TV. If that product was that good, trust me, it would be making $1 million. They'd want to sell it everywhere. It would be every gas station, 7-Eleven. There'd be guys with carts on the street going, buy this. Just use that. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
There is no God or supernatural forces that are coming to save us. There's only us. So if we want the world to be better, human hands, human efforts, human ingenuity has to do it.
Every religion has a form of this, it seems, in their rules. So if you believe in religion, it's really do unto others as you would like done unto yourself. It's almost like you can't live by a better rule. It just seems, it's common sense. It doesn't even have to be attached to any religious thing. It just makes common sense to treat people like you would want to be treated.
在孔子以前，没有人提到这个淫律，或者我们现在今天叫禁律吧。
我不想干的事，我不能强迫别人，怎么能去伤害别人呢？孔子是绝对不允许的。
The golden rule, it has problems. Because when, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, inherently in that sentence, it says that whatever you want to have happen to you is better, and you're imposing that on another person. A guy could say, well, I want to be raped, so I guess that means I should rape somebody. I mean, like, the golden rule isn't, in general, that's a good thing to think, but if you really use that as a basis for your life, it's a very arrogant point of view, because it insists that your desires are the same as everyone else's.
What's a better replacement for the golden rule then?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you after you ask them if that's okay.
孔子讲了一句很有名的话，那么这个话呢，可以说是孔子思想的一个宗旨，就是己所不欲，勿施于人。
Do not do unto others what you do not want to be done to you. I mean, it's sort of the, not quite what Jesus said, it's more what Hillel said. It's couching it in the negative. If you live your life ethically, it allows you to have a richer inner life.
This gate means vital force.
Of harmony, vital force of supreme harmony. The goal of Confucius is to achieve harmony between everybody.
When the human family of the planet Earth learn to have lawful and deliberate dialogue, only then can we live in harmony and in peace as a human on this earth.
I think enlightenment is that moment when you realize what's really going on, when you realize that you are a part of everything that is, and so is everybody else.
Live in the world, but be not of it. Play your part, but do not become your part.
The reason we're asking this question 2,000 years later is there is no good answer to it. My job as a scientist is to try to help people know what's true about the world, what they do with that information, how they incorporate it into their lives, how it changes the decisions they make. That's up to each individual. I'm not in the business of telling people how to live their lives.
How should I live my life? What philosophy would you give me?
Take care of your planet, enjoy yourself.
In a way that says the world will be here and will be a good world for my children.
Life is a ball in your hands to play with. Don't hold on to the ball.
Follow your joy, follow your excitement, follow your passion, act on it.
We Satanists are just trying to have a good time. And if you want to be part of that, you're welcome to be part of it. And if you don't, then just kind of keep out of our way.
Let us every single day do an act of love and kindness, no matter how difficult it is.
To live a life of love is a decision that is renewed constantly.
Live the life gracefully and with love.
दूसरे की सेवा करना, किसी के साथ भोग नहीं करना है.
We all have trials and tribulations. We all go through situations in life that we just don't understand why they happen. But it's the good times that we need to think on, the times that we can remember. This brother, you know, as he set forth on a road and he stayed there. He was steadfast in his walk. He knew what he set out to accomplish and he accomplished it. The good times, the good things, you know, that's what we need to remember today.
You take the bad and push it aside because there's always good to prevail. Things will get better.
Look for the good. The glass is half full, not empty. Look for the good and look for the kindness in others.
Ovako, najbolje da unadi. Danas dobiješ, sutra gubiš, preko sutra dobiješ I tako je život.
Help as many people as you can.
I think that anyone should be free to choose how they live their life, whether it's a good life or a bad life, as long as they're happy with it.
I think the important thing is to be here now. I think it's to breathe, just to be.
Right? So rather than try to form the world of your own making, try to see what is. Be open to what really is. Look around, open the window, take in a deep breath and realize that this spectacular thing called life is yours.
Recognize that life is finite, it's the only life you've got. Live it to the full. Live it not just for your own benefit, but for the benefit of not just other humans even, but all sentient beings. Make the most of your time here. Also enjoy the privilege of understanding, and that means scientific understanding of the mystery of how you came to be here.
Make a difference for the better that you ever lived at all.
Horace Mann once said that one ought to be ashamed to die before you have accomplished a great boon or benefit for our species. That, to me, is a philosophy for living.
Do what you can, where you can, and when you can.
If you want to live a dignified life, if you want to live, you want justice to be meted out to you, you have to see to it that it is given to all.
We help others. We help to must others. We respect others. We give regards others.
Whatever action you take, always think of the poorest of the poor. How is it going to affect that person? If it affects adversely, then your action is wrong.
You should lead a life which is full of values, knowledge and power.
Rite Jnana Mukti, it means if you have knowledge, is of no use because the knowledge speaks and wisdom listens.
王様として生まれたら王様としての生き方、商人なら商人、農夫なら農夫の生き方がある。その生まれたあるべきままに生きるっていうの、あるべきよう。
Don't try to be pushed around by what people want you to be or how they think you should be. Live what you need to do, and then you'll automatically be a gift for all other people. I would say find out who you are. And once you found out who that is, then offer that to everything that you do.
Be your best self.
Do what you love and harm no one.
Man's character is his destiny. How you develop determines the kind of individual you'll be, and although we don't have that much control over our lives, it has a lot to do with the outcome of our lives.
When your life looks like a soap opera, it's time to change the channel. I said that to someone, and I was being rude.
就蹲田个多么啦，就是蹲田嘛，老百姓就是蹲田啊，做什么？
家庭妇女搞点菜是吧？炖点甜，能做什么？就是这样的。
Live a more simple life. Get back to the woods. People are too much out of the woods now.
You know, we have like a senior center and like a daycare center about a mile apart. I say they should be close. They should be working with each other all the time because the elders be teaching the little ones. But you know, in modern times now, and nobody don't see that. You know, so it's a long ways, but I think people will start seeing that.
One thing we can all agree on is that we are here.
I'm here, I know that. I'm not so sure about you.
So what is the best thing about being here?
Sex. And chocolate.
They're kind of related, aren't they, in the brain?
Well, as you get older, the sex becomes less important and the chocolate gets more important.
What is the best thing about existing?
Masturbation. No, it's not the best thing. But somebody did ask me, would I ever commit suicide? I said, not as long as I can masturbate. You know what? Don't use this. I'm even going to drink a coffee, so you cannot use it.
We're not separate from the universe, we're parts of it, and in some sense, we are the universe contemplating itself.
Whenever you look up at the sky and it's just clear and cloudless and beautiful, but I like clouds too, it really makes you appreciate, you know, we just got put on the most beautiful place ever.
The best thing about being here is feeling emotions, you know, the feeling of happiness, you know, sad, pain, even pain, you know, love.
I love life, so I don't want to die. That's why I'm here. I'm trying so hard to survive and enjoy the time.
Love, life, my children, and the joy I get from them.
The most important activity of human life is raising children.
It's having kids. That's pretty much, you know, what I think we're here to do, just like any other organism.
My greatest hobby is to go home and yell at my kids. I know it seems like it's contradictory, but you know, to go home and to just experience with them, for better or for worse.
The most important thing is family.
And after that, it's just having as comfortable and successful life as possible.
The thing that sets humans apart is their ability to really understand the universe. And that's what I do for fun, and I'm lucky it's also what I do for money.
What is the best thing for you, for Stephen Biller, about existing?
I think what's important is sort of, you know, making a good life for yourself and seeing the connections between things in a way that you know, gives you some logical way of linking things together and gives you some intuition for being able to make predictions.
Trying to really know what our reality is about. That really has been a question that has been on my mind since I was a kid, and I used to go in and talk to my father about, you know, why are we here and how do we know that, and why do we... I think one of the things that was always striking to me was I never quite understood why you had so many different perspectives on what the world was about, and whether it was in politics and you're talking about Republicans versus Democrats, or whether you're talking about religions and Jewish versus Christian versus Muslim. I was just so intrigued by the fact that how did these people come up with these ideas that were so disparate, and what were they looking at, and why did they all believe that they were right and everybody else was wrong?
The thing I love the most is being able to act on my curiosities. As a little girl, my mother always used to point out to me that she used to get annoyed because if she'd tell me anything, I'd always say, why? The little scientist in me was always coming out even then.
What is the best thing about being here?
Human relationships.
Relationships. Connections with other people.
Knowing people, I mean, people are really complex.
We're social mammals. And so the 10 of the top 10 things that make us happy are probably having to do with other people.
The friends, the family, the experiences that you pick up along the way, the information you find out, and just living, observing is just the greatest thing.
Having a relationship with the Lord.
We all contain the potential for reaching the divine.
The assurance of having Christ in your life.
When I realize that I'm a child of God, that puts meaning and significance in my life, and the best part is realizing that.
I think the best thing about being here is making decisions. being able to choose.
The best thing is that you can like affect some kind of positive change, positive effect on things.
Sushi. I think food. I think food is fantastic. It's such a great thing to live for. I love food. And trying to accomplish as much as you can in the time that you're here, because you never know when it's your turn to check out of the experiment.